Good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon to panelists. You've all been introduced, so we'll take that, so we'll save some time and progress this as quickly as we can. You're all welcome to this panel session on the gaming and technology regulatory environment. I'll take the liberty to extend it by adding across jurisdictions in Africa. That doesn't significantly modify the topic, does it? Essentially, why I've done that modification is such that we can give our jurisdictional experiences with specific examples so that everyone can learn from everyone's jurisdiction or from everyone's experience. That way, it's more beneficial to everybody. By way of introduction, I will say in this age of artificial intelligence and Internet of Things, there's really no gain in saying that technological invention and reinvention will be the core driver of growth across industries. The gaming and tech industry inclusive, hence the need for regulation to constantly evolve to, such that regulation is seen to be setting the agenda and not playing catch-up with the industry. We all know the implications of playing catch-up. Having said that, in no particular order, I would say, let's dive into this subject by giving us your individual regulatory experiences from your markets, using specific examples and occurrences, the challenges you face, and the prospects you see in your market before we begin to go into further specifics. So we won't take it in any particular order for the men, but the ladies can start.
Thank you. My experience as at the BCLB, that is the Betting Control Licensing Board, is that the board, or rather the regulator, has to have a hands-on experience, a hands-on approach with our licensees, because as we have said, technology is always moving. It's always a moving target. You do this today, tomorrow you're waking up to new, to development, for example, of new games, new technologies. So what the board has done is to have a hands-on approach. We don't let our licensees just do what they want to do. The board is always and constantly approving new games, new things that they want to incorporate into their platforms. The other thing that the board has done is to also to have a close collaboration with the Association of the Gaming Operators, because they have their own association that they use to lobby the government for whatever need they may have. The other thing has been the board is also doing a promotion of protection of punters because of the tendency of betting to become addictive. So it becomes a bit hard sometimes to draw the line between genuine business and also problem gambling. So the board also has to come in, as much as we are legal, we have authorized, we have licensed these businesses, then how do we protect the public against the harmful effects of gambling? So I think I'll stop it at that.
Thank you so much. A very interesting point you make there, my sister. But I think from my side, if I were to kickstart from my experience in South Africa particularly, I would begin with a point that, I would have shared yesterday on my LinkedIn my thoughts around what I term a PRO triad. PRO meaning that public, and then regulators, and then you have operators, that we cannot have an industry functioning properly without one of the three, or with all those three not working together. But I think in the main, why I'm raising this is because when you talk of regulators, we as regulators, we are actually entities of government, whether at national level or provincial level. Now, ours is used through an authorizing legislation that has been set by government. Now, it is not only our duty, but also if we were to have an active government in terms of participation, we would not then be playing the catch-up. Because if we talk of regulations, you start from the Act. The Act is a competence of a provincial or national legislature. And then you have regulations that are a competence of the minister. Now, in South Africa, for example, we've got a national gambling board, we've got provincial licensing authorities, of which I'm part of. And then we have, as part of the framework, we've got testing laboratories, we've got operators forming part of the technical working committee, dealing with the technical standards, but we've been saying that the technical standards are outdated. We've got new technologies. They're not coming, by the way. They are there already. Your AI, your IoT, you talk of your cloud computing and so on. But if you go to the legislative framework, it's so outdated. So I don't think the issue primarily or mainly it's on us as regulators, but if we're to have an active and participative government in terms of ensuring that is taking the lead in creating the legislative framework, would then be enjoying that. But in the main, we've got technology, and technology is here to stay. As you can go to your bank, for example, I don't visit any bank anymore. I use my mobile app and so on. But we need the active participation from government. I think in addition to what you were saying, my sister, that we must play that active role. But in South Africa, I can tell you, we've got open door policy. We appreciate one another as partners with operators, manufacturers, and everyone else. And lastly, from my side, indeed, as we innovate, I think majority of speakers today touched on that we must innovate, but ethically and responsibly, and ensure that we protect the patrons or the consumers. Because if we don't protect consumers, there will not be an industry that's going to consume your products. Thanks.
Okay. Good afternoon, all. Well, my experience from a legal point of view, because I'm a lawyer, so I will stick strict to what the regulation provides concerns gaming in Cameroon. Well, our regulation is quite effective. It's quite succinct concerning the gaming industry. But the problem with Cameroon is implementation of the law. You say, for instance, the law provides for a regulator. That law was adopted in 2015, and the degree of application was promulgated in 2019. But you won't believe me, we're in 2025, and still yet we have to have that institution. The institution is not yet in place, but the law provides for that institution. So what does it create? If you come to Cameroon and you want to invest into the betting company, you obviously fill in all the conditions of entry, your entry fee, everything. And the authority, who is the Minister of Interior, is going to issue your license. But when you start operation, it is the regulator that comes in to make sure that you comply with the rules of law. But that regulator is absent. He is not there. So it creates a vacuum. And those that are operating have that very large march to violate, at times, the law, and sanctions won't follow. So it is, I want to believe, as time goes by, things are being put in place progressively. But looking at the way the gaming industry is developing in Africa, I think my government will really have to act fast, or else they'll be missing out a lot in the gaming industry. Thank you.
Our experience in Ghana has been, I would say, ours has been trying to balance a growing market with player protection and promoting responsible gaming as well. It's in a rapidly changing environment where the games are changing and the market is growing, it's almost been a situation of trying to balance and also play catch up to the new technology that has emerged or is emerging. One of the big things that we are experiencing currently is with cryptocurrency and operators offering that as a means of for a betting wallet or as a means of paying for gaming. Meanwhile, the national laws have not caught up to that particular situation. So, in as much as the market has grown the Ghanaian market has grown, we see that there's a lot that still needs to be done technology-wise in order for the regulator to have full visibility or to have a full appreciation of what is actually going on with operators. And one of the biggest drawbacks has been the fact that we don't have a central monitoring system, which I think in this day and age is problematic if you want to harness the full benefits of the gaming market, of the gaming industry. So our experience has been one of growth, specifically, like I said, in trying to balance responsible gaming with our growing market. One of the first things that we did very early on was, or I should say just before COVID, was passing the advertising guidelines, where we were very specific about what kind of marketing and advertising that operators could put out there in a bid to ensure that players were protected, underage people were protected, and the right image or the right advertising was actually reaching the right audience, and people were not misled into thinking, or the youth was not to be misled into thinking that gaming was a means of subsistence or a means of earning an income. We've seen that there's been a shift from gaming being a leisure activity to the youth now thinking of it as investment, and that creates a bigger problem for responsible gaming and for whatever programs we need to come up with to tackle the issues. So I would think from a Ghanaian perspective, that has been our experience. I would also say that it's been one of transition in the most recent times with the change of government and the withdrawal of the 10% withholding tax on gaming. I think the direction is to grow the industry, but also to make it, to grow the industry so that, and also to create some confidence back in the kind of gaming taxes or policy regarding taxes that were rolled out previously. So I would say that that's been our experience so far, and we are looking to the future to see what this new administration brings, because they seem to have a keen interest on gaming and gaming policy.
Okay. Good afternoon. So, in case of Nigeria, the Nigerian gaming sector is currently undergoing a significant and a very well-deserved transformation because of our regulatory tussle that has always been between the federal authorities and the state authorities. So that has been what has plagued us for years. And that has actually brought up challenges when it comes to taxation and enforcement. As one of my sisters sitting in the audience will say, Bingwe is always saying it's double taxation. But historically, so there was a judgment that was brought to a halt on November 22nd of last year, when the Supreme Court of Nigeria made a pronouncement that we, the states, are the ones that have the right to regulate the gaming and lottery industry in Nigeria, and the federal government has no right. I mean, it's as simple as the fact that our constitution, which is what guides us in the country, clearly states that gaming and lottery is neither in the residual list, it's neither in the concurrent list or the exclusive list. So that makes it a residual matter. And all residual matters are handled by the state. So that was a very big win for us. And moving forward, after that, it is now clear because that has really held us back. So since that time, we have now come together as states. We formed a new association called the Federation of State Gaming Regulators of Nigeria. My chairman, Mr. Bashir, was speaking about it earlier. He's the chairman of that association, and he's also the CEO of the Lagos State Gaming and Lottery Authority. So we formed that association, and we have been able to bring 28 states on board. Even the ones that didn't join the case at that time are now on board with us, because we felt like for different operators to be going to different states to obtain licenses, it might be some sort of a very cumbersome process. So we are coming up with a URL, a unified regulatory license, where once as an operator, to the operators that are here, when you come to FSGRN and you obtain a license, one license from that association, you can practice in any states in Nigeria. As far as that state is under that regulatory body. So that has been the main thing for us as far as regulation in Nigeria. And so with that judgment now, we're moving forward. Things are becoming more clearer. And we're hoping that now that the camel has been kicking butt, then we can now do our thing and make sure that regulation is is smoothless, and we're doing things in a very better way so that we can create a better, more sustainable and conducive environment for the current and prospective operators that are coming to our country.
Thank you for your submissions. Let me make this apology. Sorry, it will appear like I'm backing a section of the hall or I'm siding a section of the hall. It's because of the bright lights. It shines directly here and it's quite threatening, so please understand with me. Deliberately so, for each question, there are no follow-up questions for the reasons of time. So we're going to encourage you to, by all means, take down your points or questions you might want to ask, and we will take everything at once after the session. The interesting thing from your submissions is that as much as every jurisdiction has a distinct challenge or direction, as the case may be, there are common grounds. And even those distinct existences in different jurisdictions will come to play in some other jurisdictions at a later time. Some that are currently playing have played out in certain jurisdictions before this time. What that suggests to me is the need for collaboration. It costs you nothing as an entity if you benefit from what I've experienced and I've survived. Essentially, it's the same industry. I've always made the point. If you want to build the gaming industry we're looking for in Africa, it's going to be through collaboration, not competition. And it's scalable collaboration, maybe regionally, then you can now begin to go across regions. Again, we need to be conscious of the fact that there are sovereign laws. For instance, you talked about crypto and how it has not been, there is no regulation around it in your jurisdiction. So it will be difficult for you as a gaming regulator to begin to regulate on the basis of that. The danger in it is you are regulating yesterday's problem in today's market. So there will always be that gap to play catch up. So to your mind, what would you say are possible steps to be taken for jurisdictions to further collaborate with one another so that we're all seen to be pulling in the same direction?
A very interesting point you're making in terms of what could be done in ensuring that there are collaborations. And indeed, I always say we need to have a harmonized Africa, because we are one Africa, or maybe in different states. But I think, firstly, if we were to understand that we are one Africa, and then we move from that. And sometimes we find that the collaboration may not necessarily be as easy as we wish, because we find, for example, in South Africa alone, we've got 9 provinces competing. You know, in South Africa alone, you may find that even maybe in other jurisdictions as well, that's the same issue. Now, how do we then balance that? And then on the other side, like I would have said earlier on, that we are government institutions. Amongst other things that we must do as regulators, we must generate revenue for the provincial or national government. Now, it's unfortunately because of the economic climate that we are seeing globally and locally, wherein now, government says, you know what, we need to do more in terms of service delivery. You must generate revenue for us. Now, if each province or each country wants to generate revenue, and then now want to attract business, and then we're actually competing. Now, the issue now of collaboration, then it becomes a challenge. But obviously, it's doable. And I think what needs to be done is that we need not to do what I term as a regulatory conundrum. What do I mean about a regulatory conundrum is that we put first generating revenue, and we forget about our mandate, that is to license and regulate the gambling industry. That is a key, that we've got to be able to find the balance. Because, for example, like us in the Eastern Cape, we just passed now a new 5-year strategy where we talk about an ethical, thriving, and protected gambling industry. Then the question is, how is it possible that we have a thriving industry that is ethical? And I can tell you, yes, it is possible. But how is it possible? It means that it is not only us as regulators that have got a responsibility, but the operators, the industry themselves, have got to take a responsibility amongst themselves. And they need not to take things for the purposes of compliance only, but to make sure that the compliance ethos are within their business ethos. So that collaboration is possible, but we need to have every player in that PRO that I was talking about. When I spoke about PRO, that is a public, meaning that the consumers and the families of those consumers, particularly the problem gambling, how are they affected by problem gambling? And then you talk of the regulators. Who are then the regulators I'm referring to? I'm referring to your testing laboratories that are here, your GLI, to ourselves as a gambling board, to the your lawmakers as well. We've got to play our part. And I can tell you, for as long as that we're playing a catch-up game, we are not going to be able to collaborate because we are not leading the industry. Lastly, from my side, I would have written an article, again titled A Gambling Regulatory Conundrum, integrating the IoT, the AI, the big data analytics into the compliant and ethical industry. The question I raised there is whether are we as regulators regulating the industry, just collecting revenue? Because we are not. And the industry is well ahead of us. Because why? How we write our legislation, we write the legislation based on something we know. We are not writing a legislation creating an environment wherein operators or the industry can then be able to grow. That's an issue. So I think conferences like this assist us to look at and say how to move forward. For example, my board members, they said from this conference we must be able to do a holistic change in our regulatory framework so that we can then be able to be that jurisdiction of choice that we want to be. Thank you so much.
Sorry about that. I would just want to take a different view, that the collaboration must start from a local level. That's the way I see it. Because too many times you see that the regulation is all fragmented. The Gaming Authority has its own mandate. The Ministry of Finance has a different mandate. Central Bank is in there. Data protection is in there. And then all of a sudden, it's too many moving parts without any synergy. So I would think that the first thing we need to do is to build that national collaboration, that local collaboration, and have one unified policy towards gaming, so that it's easy to do business, but also that you have a national policy towards gaming. And then once you have been able to achieve that, then you can then talk of having international collaboration. And I would think one of the first things that we need to look at for international collaboration would be how to harmonize standards across the African countries, because it's the same operators operating in all across the continent. And we have different standards all over the place. So if they are operating somewhere and the standards are high, and then they come to a largely unregulated market, then you see that they are not pulling their weight. But if the operator is able to operate within the tenets of the law in one highly regulated environment, what stops them from replicating that in a largely unregulated market? So I think harmonization of standards is very key. I also think that we need to look at how to also, because the environment is basically the same, right? If you West Africa, East Africa, Southern Africa, it's basically the same thing. So if we're able to harmonize our standards, we're able to harmonize how business is done, then I think we can grow the market, and at the same time to also help everybody else be on the same footing, so that everybody is able to benefit equally, and then the continent will also benefit. That's my thing.
You want to talk? Okay. Let me start by saying that the base, the bedrock of every activity that you carry on in life is the rule of law, regulating that particular sector. So just imagine a scenario whereby we have a harmonized law on the gaming industry for the whole of Africa, where we have stakeholders, we have the organization of consumers, and we have gaming specialists that will come together and work on something on the gaming industry that is going to regulate the gaming industry throughout of Africa. It is true you might have some exceptions relating to specificities of certain countries. Let me take, for example, in some countries, you are considered a minor to attain the age of 18. In some other countries, it is 21. So we can come up with a harmonized law that is going to cut across all of Africa. Because from the other speakers that have come, what I've realized is that the laws, they are practically similar in every country. Some very minor differences, very minor, not even something that we can really debate on. So if I want to believe if they can come together, we come up with this rule of law, then we take into consideration the specificities of certain countries, like age-wise, as I said, it's going to really, really, really advance the African continent in the gaming industry. Even in operators, even those that comes to operate in the African continent will know that there is a general rule of law that cuts across all countries in Africa. And it would be much more easier. It would be much more easier for them to come and invest. So that is what I think. That's the way forward for Africa.
Without having to repeat what my colleagues have said, because I actually do concur, we have a body under the AU, the African Organization for Standardization, which I think is a very low-hanging fruit for all of us, that we can use to standardize, the gaming industry. We can share information using such platforms among ourselves, so that so that one regulator does not seem to be doing things that are different from others, because you will find that a majority of these gaming companies are in various jurisdictions. They're not just operating in one country. They may have a different outfit in each of our countries, but you find that they are just owned by the same people. So for me, standardization and setting standards for conformity that are uniform across all the jurisdictions, then that would help us in that way.
You want to use this?
Yeah, thank you. Like we have been saying, Africa is the next big thing. And for us to actually project that, we believe that, but for us to actually project that, we need to come together in different sectors, gaming being one of it. And gaming can be the one that can model and shape all other sectors, minerals and a whole lot of other sectors that a lot of investors from outside are looking at. For me, rightly said by Gifty here, at the local level, we have peculiarities. Take, for instance, in Nigeria, there are states in the northern part of Nigeria that gaming is not recognized. I mean, they like the money as far as revenue is concerned, but they don't show their arms like they accept gambling or whatever, however you want to call it. So regulation in terms of being unified has to start at the local level, because we have to understand the peculiarities that is associated with different sectors. And there's religious challenges, and there are ethnical challenges as well. So if all those things are brought to the barest minimum, and we can harmonize those things and understand how we can make it acceptable in those various sectors that I mentioned, in the religious area or in the ethnical areas, then we will come together at some point. So on the larger part of it, where we're looking at coming together and having a unified kind of regulation, like she rightly said, these operators that are coming to our continent are the same operators both in East Africa and West Africa. So if we can form a unified framework to where an injury to one is an injury to all, it's not like we are chasing anybody, but we have some kind of harmony and understanding how things should be done. It's not only revenue that we're after. I mean, as far as responsible gaming and all other aspects of gaming, we can come together and have some kind of a guideline that we follow, and that will be the guideline that will be used in East Africa or in West Africa or what have you, and that should help us to be able to regulate properly, and we will not be all over the place as far as regulating the various operators that are coming in our continent. So I think that's my take.
From this last point that we made, my takeaway would be on the area of harmonized rules across jurisdictions and standards, and the need for, I would say, deeper interaction with a view of establishing or deepening collaboration. So that would take me to the area of safety and player protection. We have all established it that even without saying it openly, that it appears regulation will do some, not necessarily gasp for breath, but at least do some catching up with the industry. At the same time, in regulation catching up, regulation shouldn't be seen to be over-regulating or shutting down innovation, for instance. The operators are the owners of the businesses. They are the ones who will come up with these things. The significance of regulation will be that you are positioned to catch it as it breaks and understand it as quickly as possible. I would say let's share our jurisdictional experiences in the area of player safety as to what you're doing, the worst thing you want to do. I mean, I know we can't stop these bad guys from coming in, but the worst thing you want to do to a sinner after breaking into the church is to hand him the pulpit. There still has to be a pastor. So as the pastor, what is it that you're doing to combat these bad guys from coming into your jurisdiction, or at least minimize the effect of what they do in your jurisdiction?
Okay. Okay, I'll go, that's fine. One, I think from my side, I would have spoken about the mandate of the regulators being to license and regulate and then generate revenue. Now, key to the regulation is punter protection. Hence, I was speaking about the public protection. Now, when you talk of the safety, I'm happy to say in South Africa, for example, we have an industry that actually actively or proactively took a stance. If you know about South African Responsible Gambling Foundation, it was actually an initiative by the licensees. As regulators, we form part of that. But it was the licensees that voluntarily put money aside to make sure that there's a fund that is created to have that national responsible gambling program at the time. But it has since transitioned into becoming now a foundation, having that program. But over and above that, what we have also done is that through the technical standards that we have, as developed by South African Bureau of Standards, we have requirements that all your systems that you are utilizing in operation must have elements of parameters that ensure that if, for example, I'm betting online, you are to offer betting online, whether it's a mobile, whether it's websites, but there must be punter registration. And there's got to be issues of age, underage restriction. There must be also verification of your identity with South African Department of Home Affairs. That we have. And then we have rules as well that we have in place. But what we are seeing now with the new technologies, the emergence of new technologies, your AI of this world and the like, but also, coming from COVID-19, loss of jobs, the economy, which is bad, people now, they are seeing gambling as an option to actually replace their income. They are no longer playing for purpose of fun. For example, this year in February, a gentleman in Botswana asked who on earth do you think would go to a casino, take a taxi or drive to go to a casino just for fun? People are going to gamble so that they can make money. Now, what then we need to do is that we need to invest a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money in terms of responsible gambling programs. And what we've done in the Eastern Cape, for example, we've said that we are going to separate problem gambling and responsible gambling. Because responsible gambling deals with those that are still gambling responsibly, they are not sick. Then problem gambling then identifies those that are problem gamblers that need help. That must then be dealt with. So now the strategies are not going to be the same. How we respond to the problem gambler and how to make sure that we protect a responsible gambler. And what we have done as well is that, because I think there was a speaker earlier on to saying that our kids are no longer just playing games, they're actually designing games. We have taken it to schools now with South African Responsible Gambling Foundation. We're going to schools, speaking to them, showing them how dangerous these games are. Sometimes we find that these games are not only the gambling problems or games, but you have your, Roblox and the likes. Those are, which I term it, the gray area between the gaming and gambling. So punter protection is very much important, but our strategies have got to talk to that. Our budget as well. But unfortunately, we have budget cuts across, in terms of the funding.
Okay. Safer environment for punters, otherwise known as responsible gaming. I mean, that's the way I see it. In our own case, particularly in my state, we have there are things that we have put in place to checkmate those things. I mean, before you can get a license from us, we have guidelines that we have set that licensees have to come up with, and we will authenticate those things. And in conjunction with what we have going on as well, then we do a training for every licensee. It's mandatory for you to take that training on the responsible gaming. For us that are being sponsored by the government, you know how the government bureaucracy can be. We can have challenges as far as doing a lot of programs, trainings, to where you have the actual personnel that can actually understand. operators are always 10 steps ahead of you, but we can bridge that gap to understand more how things work and how we can also help both the operators as far as compliance in the responsible gaming space, and also for the punters as well. The checks that you're talking about as far as knowing who is gambling, knowing what age and all this, and how addicted they have been over time, so that you can actually have a way of stopping a particular individual that is going overboard. Maybe in the casino, there has to be checks that you can put in place. But the way things are structured in the with government-sponsored agencies such as mine, you need a lot of money to actually achieve those things. But we'll get there eventually. I mean, with this new judgment that we have gotten now as an association, there are provisions that we have made as Federation of State Gaming Regulators that we assist all those federating states that are under that association to be able to showcase a whole lot more space for them to be able to understand how to mitigate the effects of responsible gaming going forward.
Yes, in our case, for the BCLB, we continue to have our operators display responsible gaming messages in the course of their advertisement, because as much as they want people to play, they also must notify them that gambling is actually addictive. And that is part of our, because the board approves all gaming advertisements, part of it is that it must bear a responsible gaming message. We also require them to have self-exclusion measures for people who feel that they're addicted to gambling. They have to be given an opportunity to exclude themselves, either through the online platforms, and in the case of walk-in or land-based casinos, then the board writes to every casino, notifying them that a certain individual should not be allowed into the casino for purposes of betting. So as much as we, like I said earlier, we are licensing them to offer the business, but at the same time, they have a responsibility to protect vulnerable persons. So it's a balance, it's a tight balance between regulating, doing business, but at the same time protecting the public. We also have regulated advertising, through mass media, with there are times within which gaming advertisements may be run in the media, and there are times within which gaming advertisements must not be run through the media.
Yeah. Beyond going, ensuring that operators are putting in place the responsible gaming tools, self-exclusion, and for operators to, for punters to be able to set bet limits and take time off and all of that. I would want to look at it from the point of where can we do much better. We have all these beautiful tools, we have all these beauty requirements and rules and the law requiring operators to put in place these things. But after those things have been put in place, then what happens? The punters are left on their own. So I think that the focus too should begin to, the focus should be shifting to how to provide treatment for these punters. Recently in Ghana, we started with focused campaigns on responsible gaming and on problem gaming. But one of the key things that keep coming up is punters reaching out to the commission or reaching out to the regulator, asking where they can go for treatment. And we've seen that that's a gap in the whole responsible gaming message and policy. The resources need to be put into actually getting treatment centers and people who are trained to help with gambling addiction specifically. In as much as other addictions are the same, usually with a gambling addiction, then it goes, you just spiral and it gets into other things. So I think focus now is on how to get treatment centers, adequate treatment for people who have actually who have these gambling addictions, and to try as much as possible to prevent underage gaming, which is big now, especially with the proliferation of mobile money and children being given mobile phones by their parents that already have mobile money wallets because they're in school and parents need to send money to them, and not particularly checking to see what their kids are doing with mobile money wallets that are registered to their parents, because essentially if you are below 16 years, 18 years in Ghana, you can't have a mobile money account. But because of ease of doing transfers, parents will register these wallets in their own names, and then children take advantage of that. So that's an issue that we are actively trying to find a solution to. But beyond that, we really need to start talking about how to provide treatment for people who have identified or who have come up as having issues with problem gaming. I think the other thing is also to look out for, as regulators, the kind of games that we are allowing into the industry. There are some that have come up and creating issues, and that conversation we need to start having that conversation about what we can do to also not create an environment where highly addictive games are allowed into the system, and then we are going to spend resources and money trying to then find solutions to them.
Okay, concerning responsible gaming, the laws have provided very good provisions for that. They have taken everything into consideration. But what then? Is there a follow-up? Is the law being transposed on the field? Is there an action on the field to effectively verify that those laws are implemented to the letter? In my country, for example, in Cameroon, land-based lottery, you don't have to open them beside schools, these betting shops. They don't have to be beside schools, hospitals, and prisons. But you see them littered everywhere. And when they are littered everywhere, even beside schools, you see them. So the laws are good. The laws are there, they are very good. But is there a follow-up? Who is there to implement? Who is there to make sure that those kids that are minors don't go to those lottery spots? That is the problem with Africa. Not only Cameroon, that's the problem with Africa. The problem with Africa is the implementation of the rule of law. They have very good laws, but now there is no follow-up. They don't implement. And that is how things go the way they are. And that is why you see they start coming up with commissions on this, commissions on that, which doesn't help in any way. They have to make sure that that is what is being voted by Parliament is actually implemented. That is the problem. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, well, I'll say the gaming industry is no exception to that. Similar issues exist in other industries. One thing that is not an option is to give up on regulation. That clearly is not an option. I thank you all for your perspective on the various subjects that we have touched on. I will now encourage us to take a few questions from the audience. And when you are responding to those questions, just to save time, I will encourage you to take the opportunity to give your closing remarks. How many can we take? 2, 4? Just 2. So I'll leave that to you then. So please identify 2 people and let's have the questions.
An extra mic over there at the back.
Distinguished panels. I think my own thing is just a comment or observation, so to say. We have to be extremely careful about the way we use certain words, which is harmonization and collaboration. Then, in the middle, I heard one law for Africa. It's never going to be possible. Because we have to remember every single nation has their constitution. So, what is most important that I jotted down is more like understanding collaboration on, for example, slot machine standards. So there are standards that we should not accept on the continent. There was a time some slot machine did not meet requirement in one of the East African countries, and they're trying to dump it in Nigeria. So we have to find a way. And because of our relationship with that country, they call us because they can the operator can manipulate those machines because it does not meet the minimum requirement for system audit and all that. So we can understand on that level and agree that these are the minimum standard for machines, like a technical requirement. Another thing that we can agree upon is reciprocity enforcement. So if one operator is on license in my jurisdiction, I can report on our common platform and they can be penalized from that. So that will reduce it. Another thing that may be useful to all of us is that if we can agree on minimum requirement for license. I mean, other countries can be higher, but if we can agree on minimum, so it will be easier for an operator to come and say, look, I'm coming to Cameroon to apply. But because I have license in Kenya, so the application process will be streamlined instead of going through 10 steps. So if you have license from Cameroon and you are coming to Kenya, maybe we'll go through 5 steps. Those are the areas I think we should look at. If we because I don't want us to leave this conference and start having confusion. So those are the areas we should look in terms of collaboration, because definitely our constitutions are different. And that's why even the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, it took years for some country to ratify it, because they say have to go to their parliament to ratify it. They can't just sign it. But our focus should be more on the standards and partnership, collaboration, not the law. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Karani from Kenya. I would just have a comment and a question. Comment pertains the issue of revenue. I think we should understand we are supposed to license and control. The issue of having target given, you have to collect a given amount of revenue. Sometimes it's wrong because you cannot control the market. That is one. The question pertains the guy from Nigeria. I could want to know what does the federal government does, because maybe every state is like the license on their own. Then you are coming with the federal regulators to have a common license. I think it should better have a federal where you have a license from federal government to assist you. Thank you.
Okay, you're saying that if I understand you clearly, you're wondering about licensing from different states. Okay, so I can tell you for free, like I mentioned earlier, that most of the states, especially the ones in the north, they are regulated by their Internal Revenue Service. They don't even have a gaming law in their various states. So the states that have full agencies like mine, there are not a whole lot of them. So the federation is going to come up with a law that will be unified, that everybody can use. So that's why we are doing the URL, unified regulatory license, that once you get that license, you can go and practice. Like I said clearly again, a state like Zamfara State does not have a gaming law. In such a way that even with them getting proceeds from beer, they say, okay, we don't want beer in our state, but they get the revenue when the money is shared at the top. Do you understand? So they don't have a law to where they can even say this is wrong. But with the federation now, the federation can now use its own law, which is going to be a unified law to regulate that space holistically within all those federating states.
Thank you very much. My assumption would be we'll take the first one as a comment or observation. Yes. So nobody is responding to that. So we'll take this as your time to give your final thoughts.
For me, my thoughts is that that this will finally become a reality. These conferences that will keep talking and talking and talking and talking. Then when are we finally going to action what we are talking about? That's my take.
That's so true, my sister. I always say we go to these conferences, we have great discussions, and then we leave them in the conference room. We go back to our country, we forget. We come back again, we start the same thing. But with that said, Program Director, I think from our side, indeed, I must say the AI-driven systems or technologies are going to help us. I can tell you. So is your IoT and so on. And even now, I was so happy to see some presentations here. As Eastern Cape, for example, we're considering a number of systems that are available where we can be able to track the movement of the LPMs or machines, gaming machines, but also, the advertising wherein the messages are being sent to punters or patrons, but want to make sure that we also track the traffic of that. But my fear is that I think it was CEO from Lagos, Regulators, where he said that we must be wary of over-regulating. And if we over-regulate, we find that we are feeding the black market, which is a problem that is taking revenue away from government and killing people. Because people, they go there, there's no RTP there, there's no responsible gambling, there's no requirement. They do as they please, those guys. So that's just about my closing remarks. Thanks.
Okay, for my closing remarks, I would like to say 1,000 miles starts with a step of faith. We have started, we won't stop. It's not all about networking, but it's about also creating awareness. The awareness is being created, and one day we shall definitely get there as one block. Thank you.
Okay, so for me, like I said, Africa is the next big thing, and I appreciate being here, and I want to just implore all regulators that are here, even the operators, payment companies that are here, that we should all work together to have a very, very clean and conducive atmosphere as far as this industry is concerned. We all know the right things to do. The operators should not be shortchanging the regulators. The regulators should not be over-regulating the operators as well. So let us all harmonize, with all the things that we have said, and make sure that we continue to have a very responsible and sustainable gaming space.
Mine will be very short. I think that it's either you adopt technology, you modernize as a regulator, or you will be left behind.
Thank you very much, everybody. That brings us to the end of this panel session. Thank you for your time and perspective.